In this video, I want to discuss the different digital spaces and also why, in some instances, we need to be careful when sharing content from Twitter or YouTube over into our Facebook networks if we still have them. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76, my original channel. Please like this video, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. This video might be more of a ramble, and just maybe more of me just getting my thoughts out, but I felt compelled to make this video based upon something that happened recently. So over here now on my original channel, we discuss general topics. I've had numerous guests on, and I tend to talk about current events. I've spent some time talking about money and just thoughts of the day. Oh, by the way, I'm wearing a Wu-Tang Clan t-shirt, and over on my entertainment and media channel, I just uploaded a video about the series Wu-Tang: An American Saga, and I have 4 channels now in addition to this one. I also have my sports channel, Big Discussions 76 Sports, and I have my science and technology channel, Big Discussions 76 Science and Technology, and also I have Big Discussions 76 Entertainment and Media. So if you're interested in any of those areas, please go over to those channels and subscribe. Okay, so general topics. So in this video, I want to talk about the different digital spaces and what happens when you share information into other spaces where the populations are vastly different. So there's a bit of a revolution going on now in terms of our ability to generate and share information. Recently, I was on Twitter, on my original Twitter account, and I saw an article by a gentleman named Wayne Dupree, who is a black conservative. Now, before I go on, I'm not a conservative. I am an independent. So I'm not allied to either party. I'm just always on the lookout for information, and I don't care so much who it comes from, only that it's valid and that it's true. So again, I care more about whether or not the information is valid and if it's factual, regardless of who it comes from. So before I got my Fire Stick, I would actually tune in to both CNN and Fox to try to get both sides of a given story, and then what I would do is try to piece my own truths together. And I think that we've gotten away from a place where the facts are just put out there and we can decide for ourselves, and now we have more biased reporting where they're telling us what to think. So in any case, this particular article, or as I'll soon describe it as clickbait, it came from Wayne Dupree's website, and it was titled, Michelle Obama says that having her 2 daughters was a concession. It was a concession versus pursuing her own personal career aspirations. And so I said, that looks interesting. So I clicked on it and I read it. And so it talked about that. So it actually talked about this documentary that came out recently called Being Michelle Obama, which I think is based upon her book. And her book particularly amongst black women, caused a huge stir. They were really, really feeling that book. She was on a book tour, and all you saw on Instagram and Facebook was black women, the black women that I know, going and really, really enjoying and consuming this Michelle Obama book tour. So it talked about the statement that she apparently made, and I should have gone back and fact checked to see if she actually made that statement about her daughters being concessions. It also talked about how disappointed she was in the black community for not coming out and voting more to give President Obama the Congress in his second term. And I had heard that before, that they were both the Obamas were disappointed about the black voter turnout as his administration and his years in the White House went on. But there's also been a huge undercurrent, and there's been a lot of content created voicing displeasure with the Obama presidency on the behalf of many black people. So I made the decision to share that, in my Facebook network. I said, okay, this looks interesting. And also recently, the other thing about it was there was a lot of talk about her wanting to be equal to Barack Obama. And something that's being discussed a lot in my circles, particularly in my male circles, is that it always seems like that Michelle Obama has to be in the spotlight with Barack, and she has to be front and center with him more so than prior first ladies. And there's the feeling and the opinion that she doesn't always speak positively of her husband. And I think one time she called herself a single mother, and so on, et cetera, et cetera. But this is not, I'm not making this video to particularly bash the Obamas, Barack, or Michelle. I'm saying this to say that these are things that people had been talking about even before I shared that piece over into my Facebook network. So there was a visceral reaction to me sharing that piece over into my Facebook network. And I honestly did have a little discussion with myself. It was in the morning, and it was a nice peaceful morning until I did that. And I did ask myself, okay, do you really want to share this over into your Facebook network? And I said, yeah, I mean, what's the harm? I mean, people are already talking about this over here on Twitter, and people are talking about this on YouTube. And what also made me decide to share it was that I think that a lot of women these days are conflicted in terms of whether or not they should go ahead and to try to be traditional mothers, or if they're going to go and try to be like men in terms of achieving success, achieving high salaries, and pursuing careers. And I can think of a couple of women who have told me that they were told or they were tricked into believing that they could have it all, the career, the family, all of it. Now, the other thing in terms of Michelle wanting to be equal to Barack, a lot of divorced women consequently or coincidentally recently have told me that one of the reasons they got divorced was that they felt like they had to compete with their husbands. They saw their husbands becoming successful, and they felt like, well, I should be doing something too. So I really think that Michelle Obama, the reason she appeals to a lot of women, in this instance black women, is that I think a lot of women in 2020, it's not good enough just to be a wife and to bear children and raise children. They also want to be successful in their careers, and they also want to be moguls and some sort of high achieving individual too, being equal to men, in some instances competing with men and surpassing men. So that's what made me share that. And again, these are things that had been revealed to me, and these were things that people were talking about already. But when some people in my Facebook network saw that title and saw the it's a bit of a macabre, I think that's the right word, a bit of a macabre picture of Michelle Obama flanked by her daughters, and then that title, there was a backlash. And I can think of 3 to 4 people who came out immediately on the attack. This is taking her words out of context. This is clickbait. This is not a credible source. And one of the things that I realized shortly before shooting this video is that all of the digital spaces are different. And I realized that my Facebook network, these are all people that I know. And I think the majority of my Facebook friends are left-leaning liberals. And so when something more conservative or something more independent comes in, that's against the narratives that they're used to, or in this instance, when there's something that seems to be attacking the Obamas, there's a natural backlash. And so, and so people will question, where's this coming from? Is this a credible news source, or is this clickbait? And so what I meant when I said, going back to my opening, saying about there's a bit of a revolution going on regarding our digital spaces and the types of media available to us. Well, yes, now in 2020, things are set up so that there are lots of independent content creators, and there are lots of alternative viewpoints and news sources, in addition to our mainstream media news sources, who arguably are there to program us and to get us to think and react in a certain way. So people aren't always accepting and comfortable with viewpoints that are different from those that they are used to and those that they hold to be true. So clickbait. So interestingly, and the other thing I realized about, and I'm going to get to this later, your Facebook network. If you're not strictly using Facebook as a business, if you built it up over the years, those are usually your friends and relatives. So those are people who know you. And as such, if you present something they don't like, because they know you, the attacks and the shaming is going to be more severe, and you'll hear things like, "I thought better of you," you're better than this, or "How could you post this?" And so when there's that visceral reaction, more of those are going to go more towards who you are, and they're going to hurt a little bit more because these people know you, because you have a history with them. So in any case, later on in the day, I was on Twitter, and Dr. Boyce Watkins did a video on the Becoming Michelle Obama documentary. And Boyce is a black man. He's pro-black, and Boyce has never been shy about his criticisms of the Obamas. He tried to open up the video in a measured way, and lauding Michelle Obama and lauding the quality of the documentary, but he also he didn't touch the whole concessions, her children being concessions thing. But Boyce worked his way back around to the whole piece of Michelle being disappointed about the black voter turnout. So I'm going to go back to my original point, which was that people are talking about this. People are talking about disappointment in the Obama administration and the Democratic Party, and what was not done for the black community during the Obama presidency. And people are talking about how a lot of black people are not going to vote in this election. They'd rather see Donald Trump get reelected than vote for the Democratic Party and not get anything in return. People are talking about this. It's just that they're not talking about it in certain circles. So I'm going to take us back a few more months at this point. I have helped out with the Financial Peace University ministry at my church, and I've been open on this channel about how I follow many of Dave Ramsey's principles. Dave Ramsey is a talk show host and the founder of Financial Peace University. I think his talk show is called Real Money, and his whole empire is built on God's way of managing money from a Christian perspective. And so one night I was the opening speaker for our set of classes, and I referenced something I saw on one of Dave's YouTube channels, and he basically said, I don't care if some angry white feminist comes for me on Twitter. And so Dave is on Twitter, and even Dave Ramsey, Christian Dave Ramsey, is on Twitter battling with people and battling with his trolls and detractors. And so to make a long story short, I asked our class at my church, who in here is on Twitter? Because I wanted to set up my discussion about Dave Ramsey and him defending his principles on YouTube and Twitter. And only one room, there were about 50 people in that room, and only one hand went up. And I said, oh boy, this isn't good. And I realized, okay, there are a lot of people who are not on Twitter. And then I thought back to the 2016 election. And so I like to tell people, a lot of people were surprised about the results of the 2016 election, and many people will blame the Electoral College, and many people will say that the Trump people stole the election. But if you were on Twitter or YouTube, you were hearing discussions about, for example, black voters being dissatisfied with the Democratic Party. You would have seen black people ripping President Obama. You would have seen black people talking about the mass incarcerations by the Democratic Party. You would have seen a lot of people dissatisfied with Hillary Clinton and angry at Hillary and Bill Clinton. So you would have seen a lot of discussions about a lot of different things that arguably led to President Trump getting elected and Hillary not getting the votes she needed to get in there under our current system. But if you weren't on Twitter and if you weren't on YouTube hearing these discussions, then it would have been a complete shock to you that President Trump would have won that election, and it was a complete shock to a lot of people. But my thing is, they weren't in on those discussions in those other digital spaces. So my Facebook network, as I described, these are all people that I know, or most of whom I know. I either went to high school with these people, I went to college with them, I know them from salsa dancing, some of them are relatives, some of them are friends, but these are all people that I know. And I come from Buffalo's east side, so those are mostly Democratic people. I went to the University of Michigan. I'm sure that politically that was a mix of people. Most of the folks that I met salsa dancing, I would think that most of those were Democrats and liberals. But the point is, most of my Facebook friends align a certain way, and they come from certain backgrounds and certain thought processes. Twitter, I realized Twitter is different. Twitter is like the Wild West in a way. And when you go onto Twitter and people start following you and you start following people, you don't necessarily know those people personally. They follow you because you're popular, or you're well known, or you're a celebrity, or you're saying something that's resonating with them, and you follow other people for the same way. they're a celebrity, they're a politician, they're an athlete, or you see someone and they're saying things that are resonating with you, and that's how I found my hero, Curtis Schoon. I gravitated towards Curtis Schoon because he was an older black man, but he was free thinking, independent thinking. He wasn't aligning with any political party, and he wasn't afraid to ask the hard questions and ticking. He wasn't afraid to take smoke for his viewpoints. But I think the point is you don't necessarily know these people personally. The people you see and the people who you follow, many of them don't use the real picture, they use an avatar. So you don't know them. Sometimes people do meet from their following each other on Twitter. I have met someone on Twitter once or twice. I'll just leave that there. But you don't necessarily meet people on Twitter. In terms of YouTube, the way YouTube works is you set up channels, obviously, and you subscribe to other people's channels. And if you're a content creator, people subscribe to you if they like what you're saying or if they dig your topic area. And so you get to know them a little bit depending upon how much they comment and depending upon how much they support you. And sometimes there are trolls and there are detractors who come in and leave very biting and very cutting remarks, but you don't necessarily know them in a personal way. The same thing is true on Twitter. There are Twitter trolls, and there are people who are coming to put your head on a chopping block, but you don't know them personally. So you can disagree, you can argue, but you don't know them. I haven't really gotten good at using Pinterest or Tumblr or Reddit, but from what I hear, those are communities, those are digital spaces all in their own, with their own rules. I have accounts with all of them as I'm a blogger, but I haven't really mastered those yet. LinkedIn, I hear LinkedIn has its own rules. That's more of a professional thing, so you don't want to be on there arguing with people. But I hear that each platform has its own rules and its own culture. There's a woman I know, a writer, a publisher named Cameron Adams, who I took a class with her last year. She's a spiritual woman, a Christian woman. And after this recent melee on my Facebook, in my Facebook network, Cameron set out an email. She has a newsletter that she sends out, usually discussing something spiritual. And what she basically said was, while we have all of these individual freedoms, and she cited some Bible verses, she said that it's important to think about the effects on other people when we are exercising these freedoms. In this instance, the freedom of speech. And I thought about that, and I kind of meditated on that, and I marinated on it a little bit. And I said, you know what? In the future, I do need to be careful about sharing content from my Twitter digital space and my YouTube digital space over into my Facebook space. And I don't want to be responsible for stealing someone else's peace. I think that maybe everything doesn't need to be shared. Maybe people are happy and content in this instance, thinking that President Obama was, for example, the savior of black people. And perhaps people are content to think and feel like, the Democratic Party has their best interests at heart. I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying there are other schools of thought out there. Maybe people don't want to know that, in this instance, Michelle Obama maybe she said that her children were concessions to grander accomplishments. And maybe more care needs to be exercised when sharing that stuff into personal networks. Now, there are people who use their Facebook accounts and their Facebook spaces to battle. Minister Jap uses his Facebook presence to wage his war. And I'll just leave that there. And there were instances where Jap said that he was put into Facebook jail. Dr. Boyce Watkins had issues with Facebook, and that's one of the reasons why he created Black Enough. Paul Elam, I think Paul Elam, who is a men's rights activist, I've written content on his platform of Voice for Men. Paul got banned from Twitter, and Paul recently left YouTube because his messages, some people didn't like his messages. They weren't necessarily untrue, but when people don't like what you're saying, they will attack you, and they will attempt to ban you and silence you and shame you. So fortunately, there are other digital spaces, and Paul has moved his operations over to some other areas, but I think that's just where we are right now. We have numerous sources. We have independent thought. We have independent writing platforms and video platforms versus the traditional CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News. So you can have other ideas and thoughts out there. Some of them are scary. I heard something from Alex Jones a week ago that was kind of scary about cannibalism. So yes, so hearing people's thoughts isn't always a pleasant thing, but we're in a place now where we can hear and read what everyone is thinking. So, I'm going to close with something my brother said, which is that these new digital spaces have allowed us to live now in different tribes. So you have tribes of all men. You have a manosphere. You have a new black media. You have men's rights activists. You have feminists groups. You have the alt-right. You have all these different things now, and you have all this different information being shared. That's not pleasant for everyone. That's not necessarily pleasant for other groups that the information is being shared, and I'll just say that. But I do believe what my brother said was true, that we do have different tribes now. And all the tribes don't necessarily go together. All the tribes don't necessarily have the same agenda. But we do have tribes, different tribes now, different schools of thought that weren't allowed to grow and foster the way that they were years ago. But I think that, again, care needs to be had in terms of sharing ideas in specific circles, and I'm going to do my best to try to remember this thing where I shared that particular article in my Facebook network, and I'm going to try to remember that maybe I don't need to share all of what I know everywhere. Maybe some things are best kept to myself and with those who won't be offended by that information. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Have you taken on new ways of thought? Have you shared something that's offended someone else? Has someone sought to ban or censor you? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please like this video, please share it, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.